Welcome back to Studio F, where on Fast Times Willy B, we'll step back to 1987 and review The Lost Boys. Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Hit it, Russell. Russell. I said hit it.
Welcome back to Fast Times Willy B. I'm Willy B. I've got Adam with me. Adam, how we doing, man?
Oh man, we're good. It's rainy outside, but I feel like that's kind of the vibe for today.
Yeah.
I mean, for what we're talking about.
Yeah, that seems to be the theme whenever we get together.
I know, there's a storm or rain.
We're just talking horror movies all the time, and they're like, you know what,
it.
Here's a little drop of rain.
Appropriate. I dig it.
So, but like you said, appropriate, because today we're going to step back to 1987 and review The Lost Boys.
I'm ready.
One of my favorites of all
Yes.
time. I know
Same.
the same for you. Yeah, man. Director-wise, we've got Joel Schumacher.
Yeah, wild.
Who's gone on to do some Batman movies, among other projects.
Yeah, it's interesting to get him so early in his career, which I personally think is where he did his best work.
Yeah.
And the fact that he wasn't the original director, he took over and took the story in a completely different direction than where it was originally going. You know, Lost Boys referencing Peter Pan and Lost Boys, and originally they were all, the vampires were supposed to be like kids. They were supposed to be like really young, and it was going to be like, you know, a bunch of like 12-year-olds. Like massacring Santa Clara. So like, interesting. And then Schumacher kind of came in and was like, no, like let's make him a little bit older.
Yeah. Probably for the best.
Yeah, definitely.
Cast wise, we're loaded. We've got Corey Haim, we've got Corey Feldman.
The
dynamic
Coreys.
duo. Yeah. We've got Jason Patric, we've got Alex Winter, we've got Kiefer Sutherland.
Yes.
And the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah. It's I think it's an incredibly underrated cast, I will say, because when people talk about the film, they talk about the film like as a whole, The Lost Boys, right? But like when you break down the individual cast and characters and everything, it's like, and Diane Wiest, like as their mom, like, I mean, legendary Academy Award winning actress. Like, when you really break down the cast, it's like, this is a who's who of like horror. Like you think of classic horror films and there's usually like one name or two names or whatever. We got like 7 names in this movie,
for sure.
which is incredible. And so many of them, it's like before they were names, like really early in their career. So I think it's just absolutely loaded with like quality like actors.
Oh, for sure. And last week, me and my buddy Keaton did Stand By Me. So we get Kiefer Sutherland back to back here.
And Corey Haim. Or Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman.
Corey Feldman. I was going to say, where's Corey Haim?
Yeah.
Stand By Me. Yes, Corey Feldman too. Yes. So back to back on both of them.
Man,
but just Kiefer Sutherland just playing that.
He plays a good bad guy,
doesn't
he?
He does.
So believable. You ever see A Time to Kill?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, he plays just a wretched human in A Time to Kill.
Check that one out.
If you want to see peak like Kiefer evil, that's another good one too.
Great name too. I mean, Kiefer Sutherland.
That's just what a great bad guy.
But we'll start with the good. And before we even get started, I'm going to say this is where I'm sticking for the whole video.
Yeah.
I don't have any meh or bad on this movie.
No, it's funny because when I knew we were going to do this, I thought to myself, okay, so let me sit down and write. You know, I really like to think about a pros and cons. What did I like about a film? What did I not like about the film? And the pros list is about 16 miles long. And the con list, I had blank.
Yeah.
And then I went, okay, Adam, dig in. Really dig in. Yeah, it's still blank.
Yeah.
So everybody knows we're gassing this film up because it really is that good. It really is that good.
And this is back-to-back week where I'm, Stand By Me is another one I love. So this is
phenomenal
another one
film.
where I'm just going to run away in the good.
Yeah.
But the first thing I'm going to say in the good is something that this movie's just always had for me is the vibe.
100%.
It's just one of those movies that you throw it on and it fits what you're going for in life.
Yeah, regardless of what it is. Like, if you're going for like a lovey kind of vibe, it's got that.
Yeah.
You know, that relationship between Michael and Star is really interesting, right?
Yeah.
And also, we can deep dive into this, David and Michael. Because I think that's a whole vibe too. That really has not been talked about for quite a while. And then, if you're in the mood for angsty, moody, got you covered. If you're in the mood for good drama, got you covered. Good dialogue, covered. Like fun special effects. Film? Yeah, like it literally whatever you're in the mood for, covered.
Yeah. But it's from the moment this movie starts and you get the the first scene
I
is
love
great
the opening.
with the boardwalk, and
Incredible.
I mean it sets. I mean I have the boardwalk tattooed on me. That's how much I
Oh
with
yeah,
the bats
love
coming
that.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Um, you get the reds, and then you get the sea, and you get the chase down to the cop in the parking lot, and it's just you're locked in, you're captured,
Yeah, yeah,
and the sound design on when they
yeah.
fly.
I love. I could not agree with you more. I think it's one of the best openings to any horror slash supernatural kind of whatever
Yeah.
category you want to throw it in film. I think it's one of the best openings because as we talked about with films before about certain things being characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Santa Clara is a character,
Yeah.
and it's the boardwalk, the ocean, the beach. It's all characters in
Yeah.
this film, right? And immediately you get that. You
Mm-hmm.
know what you're signing up for immediately. And like you said, the sound design of when they're flying, I think, is one of the coolest choices and one of the best sound designs in any film ever. It's fun. It sets up the vibe, the setting, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like that open because I watched it when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and I remember being like, "Oh, okay, this is not like gonna be just like a fun. This is people
Yeah.
die. People are gonna get hurt. Like,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be brutal."
Yeah. Yeah, the opening, it's one of those movies that I got to watch this at a young age too as a
Yeah.
kid, and thank you, Mom. And like I said, that opening scene, it's as good as a hook
Yeah,
as you're gonna get
absolutely,
in a movie.
yeah.
It had me locked in, and then I just enjoyed the ride.
Yeah, I put it right up there with amazing openings like we get in Halloween or Scream, or Nightmare. Like that just really set the tone.
Yeah,
Because I feel like so many horror films try to set a tone, and the tone doesn't get set until 15 minutes in the film. 20. You're like, okay, this is what I'm kind of signed up for. But ones like Halloween, Scream, Nightmare, Lost Boys, immediately it's like, okay, I know what I'm in store for. I know what the ride's gonna look like.
so crazy. All the
Yeah.
movies named have something in common for me,
Yeah, just like a little bit in common.
like score wise.
Yeah, just like right there
Yeah.
at the top.
But no, I mean if you have I mean I took a public speaking class. They say the hook is the most important of a
Yeah,
speech.
yeah,
It's one of the biggest things
yeah.
in a movie too.
Yeah,
If,
it's amazing.
if your beginning is boring, you're losing people.
Yeah,
So,
right off the bat.
but they definitely do that well, and then from there you start to meet our main cast, main family,
Yeah.
as we get the drive in. And we get the murder capital of the world on the back of the
So
billboard.
fun, right?
And that just kind of goes into what I'd throw in the good next, the set design.
Yes.
From the boardwalk to Grandpa's house to the little cave that the vampires live in. Every set we're at in this movie.
Yeah,
top-notch.
and the cave was what was it? The collapsed hotel,
Yeah.
like into the earthquake. So they're in this, right? Like, talk about an interesting choice. They're in this incredibly extravagant, wealthy hotel that has been swallowed by the ground that now vampires live in. Like, that just simple choice is so brilliant. I
Yeah.
love it. And Grandpa's house, like you said, Grandpa's house looks incredible.
Oh,
I mean, it's one of my favorite like main set pieces of any horror movie ever. Is
Oh, yeah.
Grandpa's house.
Yeah, it's from the tour to the final showdown. This is the place to be in this movie.
Yeah.
I always love the tour and
Yeah, I love it.
the
yeah.
Oreos in the fridge
Yeah,
on Grandpa's
the
shelf.
Oreos.
I'm like,
That's legendary
Yeah.
now. That is like I've seen people. Speaking of like your tattoos, and like I have horror tattoos all over me and stuff, but like I have seen people with tattoos of like a little fridge open with Oreos
Yeah,
inside. Like
yeah.
that's how iconic
I've heard
it
of
became.
Thin Mints, but man,
Yeah,
Grandpa took it to a
Oreos.
whole new level, But yeah, and then we get little subtle things too in Grandpa's house at the beginning, like the milk carton with
Yep.
Laddie on the
Yep.
missing,
Yeah.
child report. So little things like that too that just come
Fun
back
little
around
Easter eggs,
and
yeah.
connect you at the end. But yeah, probably Grandpa's house is probably my favorite set piece. But
Yeah.
even like the boardwalk, like the comic shop, and
Yeah.
it's just
I
all so
love
good.
I love the comic shop. If we want to jump into the Frog Brothers and talk about that,
I mean, yeah.
Also, something that lives rent free in my head is Corey Haim's outfit when he walks into the comic shop, the
Yeah.
long white
Yeah.
coat that he has on.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I want that. I love that. I want that. It was just full blown like 80s crazy everything.
Yep.
From costume design to hair and all that kind of stuff. But when he walks in and we first see the Frog Brothers, Edgar and Allen, the way that they look at him,
Mm-hmm.
why are they checking out? Do they think he's gonna steal something? And then just that entire approach and scene. That's a scene that I've watched over and over. Just that whole approach, I think, is so brilliant. Of like them approaching him, and he knows Sam knows his comics really well, and they're like, oh, check this one out. And I don't like horror comics, and this one, could save your life. And it's like, okay, what do the brothers know that the rest of us don't know? They clearly know something, right? And Sam is just kind of very naive and looking for fun comics and all this kind of stuff. But that, once again, is a really simple scene that sets up set pieces for the rest of the film.
For sure. And, it kind of does establish relationship between Sam and the Frog Brothers, too, which becomes, a fun
really
little
important
trio as the movie goes on. Speaking of the Frog Brothers, a scene that always sticks out with them too, other than the comic book scene, is the scene with when Max comes over for dinner. Because that's where we get a lot of our vampire rules established.
Yes. But they do it in such a smart way.
Yeah.
They do it in a funny way.
Yeah.
So I really don't like when, films beat you over the head with exposition or rules, but when they do it in a comical way, like, Scream, classic. Don't you know the rules? What rules? And Randy gets up like, how dare you not know the rule? Like, that's fun, right?
Yeah.
They do it in a fun way in this. He eats the garlic and he's like kind of coughs. And they're like, oh, we got him. And he's like, oh, no, I like garlic. And they're like, oh. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's fun stuff like that. If they did it real serious, I probably wouldn't like it. But
turn the lights off, turn it back on, beers right in front of them.
But it's the fact that they have fun with it that I think is what makes it work so well.
For sure. And then, from that scene, you get if you invite him in, there is no rules.
So as a kid, I remember watching it and being like, oh, that's it. Because this is one of my very first introductions.
From that moment on, I never invited a single person to my house.
Yeah, nobody's ever been in my house since then. Speaking of, you can't come over. No, but it's, that's really fun. And that is something that stuck out in my head. I'm glad you said that, because I really do think that was my first encounter with like, oh, how do we break the rules, or how do we change things around?
Yeah.
Or, oh, if you invite them in, those rules don't apply.
Yeah.
And I remember, as a kid being like, oh,
word, that's
interesting. That's fun.
Yeah.
And the way that comes back into play, like at the end of the film and everything with Max. And, I think that's really interesting of, the Frog Brothers know all of these rules, but it's like also they're kids.
Yeah.
They don't know everything.
Yeah.
And that was one of the notes that I wrote down, which was interesting about the Frog Brothers, is that, they're the experts, but there's so much that they don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting choice too, of it's not like, oh, they know everything, but just stuff doesn't go to plan. It's like, oh shit, that's stuff that we didn't know.
Yeah.
And then when they say at the end, like, didn't you know that? And then he's like, of course I knew that.
Yeah.
And it's like, clearly he did not know that at all.
Yeah. I think that's another thing, I kind of touching on that and touching on the rules scene. This movie has a good balance of comedy and horror.
Yes. Yeah.
I never really looked at it as a horror comedy, but you could probably classify it as one.
Yeah, I think that's...
I wouldn't say it's like your Shaun of the Deads, and like it's not that zany, but like it definitely has some really good comedy in it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Horror, it's difficult to pull off comedy in a foundational solid horror. Like if you're out to make it that way, it's one way, but when you have that really kind of soft balance and you pull it off the way this film does, I think it's great, because there are moments that are like really funny that are immediately followed by really serious.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that's how life is, right?
Yeah.
Like things go from funny to serious, from moment to moment. And this film really balances that. And even when they're trying to be serious, we as an audience are laughing.
Yeah.
Like that moment at the end, like they are facing, the head vampire and they're all about to die. And he's like, didn't you know that? And he's like, of course I knew that. Yeah. And it's like, I laugh watching that, right? Because that's a funny little moment, but it's in a really serious moment. Yeah. I think that's a great point. I think they do a great job of balancing it. And that's really a testament to Joel Schumacher,
Yeah.
and his direction.
Yeah.
And in hearing interviews and actually being able to talk to some of the actors like later on, like I was lucky enough that I got to have an entire conversation with both Kiefer and Jason
Oh,
Patrick
that's
like
awesome.
about this film and talk to them about it, because at Steel City Con, like they were there to do
Yeah.
work, and getting to like talk to them about it was really interesting, and getting kind of their insights, and the fact that they really loved working with Joel so much, and he encouraged them to
Yeah.
really explore the characters and improvise things, and really kind of step out of comfort zone. And I think that's where a lot of the humor kind of comes
Yeah,
in.
for sure. No, I loved it, and it's like I said. I don't know if I'd classify this as a strict horror comedy
No,
because
no.
it definitely has more adventure to it than even comedy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But it definitely balances it really well. Because I mean, you get a lot of good laughs in
Yeah,
this movie.
yeah. You get a lot of good laughs, but you get some really terrifying moments too.
Honestly, this is just a movie where the words "Hell yeah, brother" just pop in my head a lot.
Hell yeah, brother.
From Tim Capello just absolutely shredding on the saxophone.
Oh my gosh.
To Death by Stereo.
Death
like,
by Stereo.
like there's just
Yeah.
so many moments in this movie where you're like, you throw up the rock and you're like, hell yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It really, like the bathtub scene,
Yeah.
like at the end, it's like, yes.
Yeah, it's just
yeah, there's so many scenes that I 100% think that if you have 100 films and you put the saxophone scene in 99 other films, it does not work.
No.
And it becomes ridiculous and stupid and like, okay, you've just ruined the scene
that's
for
where
me.
we're introduced to Star, man. You know?
Yes, that's what I mean. But like it works. Like you
Yes.
think 80s beach party vibe. Yeah, there's going to be a dude playing a saxophone,
Yeah.
like rocking it the way he is. Like that, it just makes sense, right? You think of how many movies, are, do the bad guys ride on motorcycles and stuff, and it just doesn't work, or it's cheesy or whatever. It totally works in this
Yeah.
movie. Oh, come down to my cave, and it's like, oh, okay, I wonder how stupid it's gonna. And then the set piece is incredible. Like they do things that other horror films have done that have not worked, and somehow, like it's interesting, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that. How does everything just work in this movie? Like is it, do you think it's the performances bringing it together? Is it the set design being amazing, the soundtrack, or is it kind of a combination of everything? Because
I think it's just a perfect
genuinely
recipe.
everything just works.
Yeah, I think it's one of those movies. And like I said, I watched this at a young age, and my entire life I felt this strongly about this movie. It's just one of those movies I have on my list that where you can't take a scene out. Everything that's there works well because of what came before and what comes after.
And yeah, every scene has purpose.
Yeah.
Meaning it pushes the story forward. It pushes the characters
Yeah.
forward. There's nothing wasted.
Yeah.
Even scenes that you think are going to be
Yeah.
wasted scenes are not. Like when Diane Weiss like goes into like the video store looking for a job. It's okay, mom's gonna go look for a job she's in a new town, of course. She meets this guy Max and he's a sweetheart, and like, okay, well, Max is gonna get killed later, I'm sure, trying to protect her. Like you kind of think of where you think the story's going.
Yeah.
And then David and the group walk in and Max is like, get out and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, and then you realize how incredibly important that entire scene is.
Yeah.
Like that scene is so
Max's
important
video
for the
store.
film. Yes, exactly. That scene is so important for
Yeah.
the film in establishing relationships and characters and motivations and all these kind of interesting things. There are no wasted, when they're eating food, in the cave, you're eating maggots, Michael, and then drinking the wine and Michael's relationship with Star, and like you're watching all these things develop. And when you go back and look at the film, every single scene has meaning and purpose. Every
payoff,
scene.
yeah.
Every scene.
Yeah, it's just one of those movies that is, at the end of the day, just very, very well made.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking horror, and we kind of brushed past it quickly, and we were talking about Tim Capello soundtrack.
Yeah.
This, in my opinion, is one of the greatest soundtracks of all time.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I'm like, what other soundtracks do I, put up against it? And I have some film soundtracks that I really, really love, but I think this is right at the top of the Mount Everest.
I mean, I have this on cassette.
Yeah.
I have it on vinyl. It's just...
I was listening to the soundtrack on the way here.
Yeah, I mean...
Just to kind of put me in the mood, and I was like, man, this is like a no-skip kind of soundtrack.
It really is. I mean,
you just let it
obviously,
play.
Cry Little Sister is the standout.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
What is
Lost
it,
in the
Gerald McMahon?
Yeah.
Just
Lost in the Shadows
Lost
is
in the
one
Shadows
I love.
was great. Yeah.
I Still Believe is obviously
Yes.
iconic.
Yeah.
To People Are Strange by the Doors, just pop it in there too.
Yeah, and it's perfect. So it's not only is the music great, but it's used so well
Yes.
at the right moments. There's a reason why Cry Little Sister is so iconic. And it's not just that it's a great song in a great film, it's how the great song is used in the great film.
And they have like the little just interjections of like the
it just pops up, and you feel like it's the creepiest little Village of the Damned choir singing, right? Like just the creepiest little kids singing that. But yeah, it is a literal perfect song in a perfect film at perfect moments. Like, spoiler alert, we're gonna get into spoilers, but I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, spoilers on all my reviews.
Yeah, but I think one of the best moments I've ever seen in any horror film ever is at the end of the Michael David fight, where David is laying there in the pile of antlers and the steam is coming, and then you hear that "thou shalt not," that moment and the way the light's coming down on it, it's an iconic moment.
Yes.
And that music, you watch that scene, if that doesn't give you the feels, like I don't know what is going to.
No.
That scene gives me like chills. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean we've talked about how much we love this movie as a whole, but man, talk about what a final showdown. Like, the final fight at Grandpa's house is, in my opinion, one of the most iconic third acts in cinema.
I totally agree. The build up is so fun, like them getting prepared for the fight.
Yes.
And what's cool is as they're getting prepared that they're not fully prepared.
Yeah.
Like they're going in to just do the best that they can, and you forget. At least for me, when I was a kid, I remember kind of forgetting, like, they're kids.
Yeah.
They're just kids. They're teenagers. Like, and they're fighting vampires that make their life based off of killing. Yeah. They live by killing, and it's a bunch of kids going to fight them, right?
They leave the dog outside. That's how it kicks off.
Yeah, and you hear it, and you hear the wind start to kind of blow, and you hear the sound, and it's let's go.
Here we go. You're like,
let's go. The bathtub scene upstairs is one of my absolute favorites.
That's the thing cool. That's the thing that is cool as well, is like all of these vampires are killed a different way, but you get every stereotypical. You get the garlic bath. You get the
I love it
arrow
so
through the heart into the stereo. You get the antlers, and then obviously the ginormous wooden stake.
The steak of all steaks. And when the truck before it comes in, it's like you get
the horn.
So great.
Oh. Good old Grandpa. And then you get his iconic line.
Yeah, I love the third act because it both gives you things that you absolutely expect and things that totally surprise you. I think, at least when I was a kid, that's how I felt. Because at least for me, I was like, okay, well, all the other vampires are going to die, and then it's going to be Michael versus David, right? And that's exactly what we get. So it wasn't surprising, but the twist of David's gone, and then Max, and you're like, hold up, wait, what?
Because the whole movie, you think David's the head vampire.
David's the leader.
So when, Michael doesn't change back, you're like,
wait, is Michael permanently a vampire? Like, wait, I thought there's rules here, right?
Michael, Laddie, and Star are all still
vampires. And I think that's a huge reveal. What you just touched on is something that I'm super, super interested in, and if I can, I want to ask your thoughts on it. Okay, so I've always been so fascinated by this. Max is clearly the leader, right? He's the head vampire. He's what started. I believe he's like David's maker, right?
Yeah.
When they walk into the video store in the beginning and they have that first conference, and Max looks like he's kicking out a bunch of punk kids, right? He tells them to leave. They do not leave right away. They wait until David says, "Let's go," right? Mm-hmm. So, for me, in my mind, the group is led by David.
Yeah.
They do not leave until David says, "Let's go." They have so much respect and admiration for David, but I also get the vibe they fear David, right? He's the strongest. He's the leader. So I thought that was such an interesting dichotomy based on what you're used to. If you've watched a True Blood or something, right? Like if your maker gives you a command, you do it. You don't have a choice, right? So Max is like, "Get out." And David kind of looks at him and smiles. And then he's like, "All right, boys, like, let's go." And then they leave.
Yeah.
Max isn't like, "Go," and then they just turn around and go like, "All right, let's get out of here." They wait for David to say, "Let's go." And then they all follow David's orders, right? So I thought it was a really interesting choice. And I don't know if it's just how it worked out, but it's like Max is the maker, but David's the leader.
So my take on it is, how I look at it is, David made them.
Yes, so they follow. So like what in your mind, what's that chain of command, right?
So Max is like the big bad. He'd be the president. David's the vice president. I guess David kind of is leading his little army.
His little cabinet.
Yeah, his little cabinet
of folk.
Yeah.
So they follow David and not Max. That's kind of your perspective.
Yeah.
Like David has to follow Max, but they follow David.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And I totally buy that. It's something that I've actually, because we're movie geeks,
Yeah.
I've thought about for years.
Mhm.
Like, this is what happens to us movie geeks, right?
Yeah.
Like, we get some sort of plot device or something, and then 10 years later, we're still thinking about
Yeah.
it. Because I've always thought, if you go back and watch that scene, it's a very intentional choice that Max gives a command and David kind of smiles. And then he's like, all right, guys, let's go. And then they head out. And Max is clearly like Max is so OP. Like that was one of the things I wrote down. Like Michael goes to attack Max at the end, and Max just kind of tosses him to the side. And then Sam is like, no, like he just grabs Sam like he's nothing. Like and Max is absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
And like when he reaches out to her and says like, come on, like it's so much better if you don't fight. Like it's like, man, how many people has he killed, right?
Yeah.
Like if he says it's so much better if you don't fight.
And I love the choice of casting for Max too, in the sense that it's just a guy that looks so normal.
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
right.
You would
just
not,
a tall, slim
you
drink
would not
of water.
guess this guy's like the vampire.
Yeah,
king. Like,
the because he's a total sweetheart.
Yeah,
he's a total and he seems to really like their mom and everything. And then when you get that at the end of like, I want a family.
I mean, he's the gentleman. He's a gentleman. He has
I want a family.
The glasses, like
how many different moments could he have killed the family? Like when he's there for dinner, could have just slaughtered them all.
Oh, for sure.
But he. The genuine side of him, I guess, right, is that he wanted a family and he wanted her to be the mother.
Yeah.
And he knew that if he wanted the sons, if he wanted Michael, if he wanted Sam, like, oh, I got to get her to willingly come along, right? Because he could have just made the family and slaughtered them, like right there and then.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's my favorite take on vampires. This movie.
Yeah, it's a really, really good one. Because that's something. I feel like every film or show tries to do a different take.
Yeah,
like they try to put their own like.
And that's with all monsters.
Yeah,
how many different werewolf movies? I mean, Wolfman was a movie we've talked about before. Like they just did a completely different take on that.
Made it more like a
disease,
rotting disease, right?
Yeah.
It is very interesting because I think it brings up the question of kind of souls, right? That's one of the things talked about with vampire lore so much is when you become a vampire, you lose your soul, so you don't have any humanity. But if that is true, it's an interesting take with the Lost Boys because Max wants a family.
Yeah.
He wants sons. He wants a wife. He wants daughters. Like
this is a vampire movie with soul.
Yeah. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
I see what you did. So it's like, it's kind of interesting because I think we can then get into, I think maybe the most fascinating thing for me in the entire film of all the things that I love is the relationship between Michael and David.
Yeah.
That is the most fascinating thing for me because, David is a master manipulator. Mm-hmm. He gets what he wants. He's the leader. He is feared. But he seems to have this weird kind of love/obsession with Michael.
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So, before I dive into it too much, I'm going to say, obviously we talked about how the acting is all great.
Yeah.
Jason Patric and Kiefer Sutherland are the show stealers, though.
Yeah, their chemistry is dynamite.
This is their movie. Yeah. Kiefer Sutherland, I mean, we already touched on it. What a bad guy.
Yeah.
This movie right here, he was born to play David.
Could not agree more.
But
he crushes the role.
Going to their relationship, like you said, it's manipulation at its finest. David, one thing I love how he always just goes Michael, like. The way he says Michael, I'm like...
The choice of him saying Michael and not just saying, Mike or whatever. Like, and like you said, it's the way he says it.
Yeah, it's got, a charismatic, creepy to it.
And he, stretches the name. It's not like Michael. It's like Michael. Yeah. It stretches the name out. And
But, I mean, I think it's just you get two guys that are doing their jobs really well in this movie. And like you said, their chemistry is so good. And that's what makes... the relationship so interesting.
Yeah.
Is because you're just getting the best of best from these two guys. And in my opinion, I mean, I haven't seen either of their full catalogs, but this is the best movie I've watched for both of them.
Yeah. I mean, I for sure think for Jason Patric, for me, it's this and Sleepers. If you haven't seen Sleepers, for anybody out there, it's really incredible. It's gut-wrenching. It's tough to watch. But yeah, this and then, Kiefer Sutherland has an incredible body of work, right?
Yeah.
He's made some great stuff, but when you think about peak Kiefer, this is what you think of.
Stand By Me in
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Stand By Me, he's not in it as much as this. That's
But
why I
I
give
mean,
this the nod.
But when he shows up as Ace in Stand By Me, I mean, he is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like when he
What a
pulls out that,
back-to-back
when
year,
he
you
pulls
know?
out that knife,
Yeah.
and he's like, "You're dead." Like you believe, like, oh, he's gonna come for him.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna come for him. You know, that was really intense. But this is charismatic in a way that is manipulation is the word that just comes up over and over, because he's like the guy when you're in high school, if you're kind of the loner or whatever, and he's the guy that pays attention to you, and you're like, oh, I'll follow that guy.
Yeah.
He's got friends, he's got power, he's got respect, people fear him. Oh, and he likes me. All right, I'll follow that guy.
Yeah.
You know, he's that guy, but he's like, yeah, I'll follow him, and then he's gonna take you right to the cliff, literally in the movie, right, like the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but his manipulation of, you know, Michael, but also like this weird sense of like feeling like he wants to impress Michael.
Yeah.
I almost get that vibe, you know, like
For
he
sure.
wants to impress Michael. He's showing Michael what this life can be.
Yeah.
And he's trying to like, you know,
Pull
I think
him in.
using the word seduce.
Yeah.
Like he's seducing Michael.
Yeah.
And
at the end of the day, when you get the ending you get to, you realize like this whole time, you know, David was trying to bring him into the family.
Yeah.
Like,
Like it was almost like his job,
Yeah.
like to recruit,
Yeah.
like into the family. But Michael's like different. Like I feel like the current group that David has, they're all kind of the same, and Michael would be like the first guy in the family that's totally different.
Yeah.
And I think that was appealing to David.
Yeah.
Of almost like, okay, this is the next generation that we're
Yeah.
trying to like grow, because I feel like Michael would be more approved by Max than
Yeah.
the rest of the group. Like Max likes Michael, Max likes Sam, Max likes the mom, like Max likes this family.
Yeah.
And I feel like he like told David like,
Bring in the Emersons, yeah.
I want that family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of a couple scenes that just popped in my head that I want to mention here in the good too, obviously the train
Yeah.
scene,
Yes.
iconic.
So
And then
fun.
the scene and the play out of Michael becoming a half vampire.
Yeah.
Obviously, we get like the flight outside the window, and Sam's going crazy on the phone. But a scene that I always loved is when Sam is getting a bath,
Yes. Yeah.
and Nanook
Yeah.
protects him.
Yeah.
And when he gets out of the bathtub, he's
Yeah.
like, "What's going on?" He's like, he was protecting, and he like, protecting what?
Yeah.
Protecting you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what a scene.
Yeah. And I love
What a
it-
name for the dog, by the way, too. Nanook.
Oh yeah, Nanook, yeah, Nanook, yeah.
Gotta have a dog one day.
And the
named him.
eyes,
Yeah.
those eyes, yeah. I love how where Michael's like hiding in the corner in the shadow, and he's just like, no, don't come near me. And
Yeah.
Sam's like, what is going on, man? Like, and the way his eyes look, you know, because it's like slowly happening, you know, after he drinks everything. You
In
know,
the mirror
and the
and-
surf Nazis.
Yeah.
The surf Nazis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, there's all the things you expect from a vampire movie, and there's some things that are fresh takes, and then there's some things that are just like, oh, I didn't see this coming.
Yeah.
Like it gives you a little bit of everything, right? And it introduces some new things, but one of the coolest things about The Lost Boys is that it doesn't reinvent the wheel.
Mm-mm.
Like it doesn't take you off some crazy path or whatever. It just takes this kind of material that you know and you recognize, puts a couple little twists on it, but
Yeah.
it's about the execution.
I mean, for as highly as we've talked about it, it is still a pretty grounded film.
Yes,
Like,
100%. Yeah,
It's all in this one city. It's not like over the top vampire lore.
No,
it's
not at
it's
all.
your basic vampire lore.
Yeah.
With, you know, the exception to if you invite them in, you lose all power
Yeah,
over them.
yeah.
But
think
it's just like you said, it's execution. Everything is done so
yeah,
well.
it's
so
about
meaningful.
and the performances. The
Yes.
acting is really, really strong
Yeah.
in this. Everybody seems. It's kind of strange. It seemed like everybody kind of understood what their job was, and they just did it.
Yeah.
You know, and they did it, and the chemistry is there.
Yeah.
The chemistry is very real, like between the cast, and I think, you know, nothing more so than what we see from Michael and David. You know, that chemistry is off the charts, and I also think something that helps this film that has hurt other films, in my opinion, that came after it, is the limitations that they had with their budget in terms of special effects.
Yeah.
It's not over the top. It's, you know, there's so much stuff that's really fun. Like they pick and choose when to use it and when to not use it. Like when the guard gets killed, you know, the cop in the beginning, like we don't see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's not this bloody crazy scene or whatever. It's like leaves it up to your imagination what happens off camera.
But then you get the bonfire.
Yes, exactly.
And that was the last scene I was going to point out is that scene when they're trying to get Michael to feed. I love it too because while they're all feeding, and this is like probably the most horror you get in the movie.
Yeah.
Until the third act, Michael's like wiping off his chops because he wants to, but he knows he can't. And
it's so bad.
And that's just Jason Patric once again, just like selling.
Yeah, really digging in.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, actors, I think this is before this kind of stuff was cool.
Yeah.
This is when serious actors didn't want to do stuff like this. They didn't want to do like horror. They took themselves really seriously. Now you have Academy Award winners left and right in Marvel films and DC films. Like that's the normal now, right? But it wasn't then. You didn't have Academy Award nominees and winners in horror films. Like it wasn't a thing that was really done much. And these actors that were trying to have serious dramatic careers doing horror films and playing vampires and all this stuff, you didn't have a lot of that. But I feel like everybody really gave it their all and really bought into like the system. And once again, I think that's Joel Schumacher because of the experience that they had with him and how encouraging he was of them. You think about it, there's a couple older established actors, but besides that, it's all like guys in their early 20s and teenagers.
Yeah.
That's what the whole film was. So wrangling that set must have been interesting.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have Kiefer and Jason, who are kind of these like brooding guys early in their careers, and then you have a bunch of kids that think that they're hot shots, and then you have Academy Award nominees. It's like, how do I juggle all of these personalities?
I mean, at this point Feldman had done Stand By Me, he had done Gremlins, and Friday 4.
So I mean, Feldman was established as being probably like the it kid actor.
I was gonna say you could probably argue that if not Kiefer Sutherland, Corey Feldman was the most recognizable name on this cast list.
Yeah, for sure.
And then obviously want to do some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as well and some other things, but and a whole trilogy for this.
Yeah,
for this
film,
is
the two Coreys. They had their movies that they did together, and they really kind of established themselves as kind of icons, of teens in the industry. But for me, once again, this is peak two Coreys. Yeah, and it's interesting because
for sure.
You have Corey Haim, who's kind of like the lead, and then Feldman, who's kind of taking more the back seat. Yeah. Which was not the normal because Feldman was definitely the bigger name and he takes more of the back seat, but definitely, in my opinion, like the more interesting character. Edgar is definitely more of a weirdo, interesting character.
I mean, I said this was my favorite Kiefer Sutherland performance, and Patrick. If I'm going on the Coreys too, this is my favorite performance.
Same, agreed.
And if I'm going off like how I said Kiefer's Stand By Me is my second favorite, it'd be the same for Feldman. If I'm going Haim, dude, I love Silver Bullet.
Silver Bullet, I think, is a super underrated.
Yeah,
really, because nobody talks about that.
No.
Nobody talks about it.
I'm glad you agree. It's
really underrated.
We should have thrown that in the
I know,
underrated.
we should have done that.
But
the underrated or the Rotten Tomatoes. I wonder what the Rotten Tomatoes on that is.
I don't know.
But you kind of get, peak most people in this movie. I mean, I guess at least for me. For any of you cinephiles out there, Diane Wiest in Bullets Over Broadway, she's absolutely phenomenal in that film. If you haven't seen it, it's really, really good. But it's kind of everybody at their peak.
Yeah.
Joel Schumacher at his directing peak.
And that's what, once again, makes it work like it does.
It just works across the board.
You're getting, meaningful scenes, meaningful writing, meaningful direction, meaningful acting. Like, just everything was...
And then
at the right time
that just lives with you forever.
That just pulls it all together. It's the bow on the present.
Yeah. It's and then all the technical things, because I always think about that when I watch films now. The hair, makeup, costume design is great. Fantastic. The makeup design for the vampires is so good.
Yes.
The lighting design.
Oh my gosh.
So I feel like you could do an entire class based off of just the red that is used in the film. Mm-hmm. Red is used so well in the film. Like Max at the end when he's just basked in all that red, and they're like, "Wait, I don't understand."
Act is...
David's gone. Like, why are we? And then Max is very slowly revealed as the leader, and he's just basked in so much red while he's doing it.
That's another part I love about this. I've mentioned it to you before. Like movies that use that red to dark grading, like Seven.
Seven is brilliant with that.
What's the other big one that I'm missing right now? Seven is those are the Lost Boys and Seven are the two that do it like really, really well. Yeah. They use that red to black grading really well. But yeah, I mean, like how I mentioned with set design, a lot of that's made by the lighting too.
Yeah.
I mean, this movie, it's
Well, the way the cabin's designed on the inside, like it has so many places to hide.
yeah,
Like there's beams and there's like the walkway and everything above. Like the cabin is designed to be able to have vampires hiding anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's, part of the fun at the end, like when Michael is looking around for David and he doesn't see him.
yeah,
And he keeps coming by and hitting him and everything, and David's laughing, and there's so many places for him to be hiding. And I think that's one of the brilliance of the set designs of the cabin.
Yeah. What else we got in the good? I think we've talked about everything.
Yeah, I think we've hit most things. Just it's really wonderful to have films like this to be able to talk about.
Yeah.
There's very few films that in a certain genre that just really lives in my head forever, like totally rent free. And this is one of those films.
Mm-hmm.
It's a film that as a kid I loved, as a teenager I loved, as a young adult I loved, and as getting into my late 30s I still love. Like nothing has changed.
No.
But I watched the film differently as I grew older. Like
Yeah.
as a kid I watched it differently. As a teenager, I watched it differently as an adult. Did you have kind of a similar experience, or did you feel like you kind of watched it the same?
I definitely feel like it's changed. I mean, as a kid, you don't pick up on some of the subtleties and some
A lot
of
of
the,
little nuances.
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, you don't even recognize probably that the milk carton is Laddie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So definitely, as you get older, it just enhances the watch because you just get more cognitive of what's going on.
Yeah.
As a kid, to me, it was just like I said. Like I watched this movie and I was like, hell yeah, this is awesome,
rock star.
And then as I get older, I see some of more of the underlying themes and the differences in relationships and how this scene came back around then. And so like now it's like I'm still like, hell yeah, brother, this is a kick-ass film. But I'm like, but it's actually also a very well-made film. Like,
yeah. That was exactly my experience. As a kid, I thought it was just kind of a rock star good time.
Yeah.
With a great soundtrack and just cool effects and a fun story. And then as I got older, I was like, oh wow, there's a lot of relationship stuff going on here. There's the romantic relationship between Michael and Star, and then there's the brotherly relationship between Sam and Michael, and then there's the most fascinating relationship, David and Michael.
Yeah.
And then there's Max. Like it's a film about vampires, but also about family and love and relationships.
And at the end of the day, there is a lot going on, but you never feel overwhelmed.
No, never.
That just goes back to the directing and the writing of this film.
It's just a brilliant piece. It works start to finish. Never a wasted scene. Great performances. Really fun ride. Gives you things to think about. And you watch the film and 30 years later, you're still talking about it.
Exactly.
What more can you ask for?
Not much.
Yeah.
But we can hop over to our final thoughts and ratings. I mean, we kind of just gave our final thoughts, but what do you want to give this bad boy out of 10?
Out of 10, I'm going to be really, really critical here.
Okay.
10 out of 10.
Let me think. Okay, I got it. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, surprise.
Yeah.
And to be clear, you might hear me give that score and be like, oh yeah, they just gassed this movie up, so of course it's going to be 10 out of 10. I can absolutely love a film and give it an 8 or a 7 out of 10.
Oh, for sure.
I can think a film is technically really bad and give it a lower score, but like I still love to watch it though. I can give, like Starship Troopers like a 5 and be like, but I'll put that on any time and watch it, right?
Starship Troopers is fun.
I love Starship Troopers, right? This is a 10 out of 10 because of all the things we touched on.
Yeah.
The music, the set design, the sound design, the acting, the performances, the story, the directing, everything. Start to finish. It is an incredibly well-crafted and my second favorite vampire film.
Okay. It's my favorite.
Yeah.
But
and then my first being Let the Right One In.
Yeah. For me, something that also helps me give it a 10 so easily is the replay value.
Yeah, 100%.
This is a movie that
Good
I will
point.
never I can safely say even down the road, I'm 70 years old. I will never get bored of this movie.
I've been watching The Lost Boys.
I visit it at least twice a year, if not more.
Yeah, so you've definitely seen it more than I have. I would ballpark. I've seen it 8 to 10 times probably.
Okay.
And time number 1 to time number 10, I'm having a blast.
I was gonna say I might have seen it 8 to 10 times in like the last 5 years.
Yeah,
like,
that's impressive.
This is just one of those movies. It's on my Letterboxd 4.
Yeah.
I don't know if you looked at my Letterboxd.
Oh, is it?
4.
It's in your 4?
Yeah.
Then you better give it a 10.
Yeah,
right?
So.
It's one of the best horror films. It's a really interesting commentary on society. It gives you so much to think about. You have a blast. And yeah, time number 1 to time number 10. I'm having a great time.
There's a reason I have a whole Lost Boys corner in my man cave downstairs.
Yeah, it's a dope man cave, man. I really
appreciate
like
that.
it. Yeah.
But I had to give it a little corner because I just adore this film.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's fun. It's a blast. And then meeting, what's really cool is, getting to meet, like Jason Patric or Kiefer Sutherland. Fast forward all the way to now, Alex Winter, got to talk to him about it. Like, they still speak so highly of this film, and they all acknowledge what it did for their careers.
Yeah.
Really, like, being a completely different launching point for their careers than they ever thought was going to happen.
I hope that they come back.
Yeah.
To Steel City Con, because my buddy bought me the poster of them all autographed from Steel City Con.
Very cool, which is very cool.
Obviously is cool, but I still want to meet these guys.
Yeah.
And you know how I am with my autographs. I think a poster is sick.
Yeah.
But I love getting like props signed.
Yeah,
You know how the or the flux capacitor
very cool.
from Christopher Lloyd. Like, taking like a Chinese box and getting it signed by Kiefer Sutherland, or taking some shades and getting them signed by Jason Patric,
Yeah, or bringing a saxophone.
Tim Cabela.
Yeah, I mean,
or if Laddie ended up going to a convention, getting the milk carton.
Yeah,
like, that would be really cool.
That would be a cool get. That would be a cool get. Yeah, whether you're getting props signed or whether you're hearing them talk about it with such admiration. And I think in the Q&A, I think it was Kiefer. It was either Kiefer or Jason that said, they talked about the film and the characters and broke it down, and then they were like, but can we talk about the soundtrack? Like, can we genuinely, like, and then I think it was Kiefer that said, like, yeah, like, I genuinely, like, still just listen to it for fun. Like, he was like, I don't, the whole actor thing, I don't watch my movies. And they're like, but all these years later, like, they still listen to the soundtrack of their movie because they're just like, it's one of the best soundtracks ever.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
But yeah. That'll do it for The Lost Boys. Adam, thank you for coming on.
Absolutely, man.
Thank you all for watching. If you like what you're watching, check out some other videos. Hit the subscribe button or follow the social links down below. It's all appreciated. We've got the second and third installments of the trilogy coming your way. So
here we go.
Buckle up for those. But let us know how you feel about The Lost Boys, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.
Cool. See you guys.